Chapter 3: The Genetic Research Institute. Dawn, 6:30 a.m. The dull golden sunlight beamed through the curtains and landed on Zutui's long eyelashes. Zutui opened his eyes right on time. The high intensity of studying and training of a third-year student had made Zutui's biological clock extremely accurate. He stretched slowly. He felt refreshed. The aching limbs he had yesterday had become very loose. He had fully recovered. Zutui's lazy expression was mixed with a thick, suave, and youthful aura. However, that lazy aura rapidly disappeared after Zutui got off the bed. It was replaced with Zutui's efficient actions. He brushed his teeth, then drank the large glass of warm water on the table. That was his mother's order. Zutui had long made it a habit. He then washed his face and changed his clothes. Zutui devoured the breakfast that had been prepared for him as fast as possible. The selection included 3 boiled eggs, a large glass of milk, a corn cob, a plate of glossy-looking buns filled with pork and eggplants, and a small dish of chili oil, which was the dipping sauce for his buns. His mother had made it herself. Perhaps it was his father who made it. It was fragrant. It was delicious. In this great genetic era, every student had to go through cultural studies and a certain extent of physical training since elementary school. These kinds of physical training reached their peak at high school. That was obvious from how physical education teachers were also homeroom teachers for third-year students. For most ordinary households, eggs were the best and cheapest way to replenish protein. Zutui's family was extremely ordinary. They lived in a small area that was full of life. His parents were also average wage earners. They only managed to have such an ordinary life because Zutui's parents had passed the genetic admission score during their time. "Mum, I've eaten breakfast. I'm heading to school now." Zutui brought along the liability form and insurance form after telling his mother that he was leaving the house and was about to head out the door. Zhang Shuli looked at Zutun and opened her mouth. However, she did not say anything. Zhu Jiangguo waved at Zutui. "Go! Remember to call us after you come out of the genetic examination hall." Zhu Jiangguo did not tell Zutui to notify them of his safety. However, Zutui could still see his mother's body shake. "I got it." He had been immature when he was young and was always repulsed by his parents nagging at him. However, today, Zutui felt the weight behind his parents' nags. Furthermore, didn't the both of us also make it through this? What's there to be worried about? Also, 20 years ago, didn't you feel more anxious than improvement when you were consuming the genetic liberation elixir? But I didn't see you cry then, right? Zhu Jiangguo's words made his wife feel better. She picked up the tissue and wiped off the tears at the corner of her eyes. "I'm just worried about improvement. Probabilities are probabilities. But if the probability lands on someone, the probability would not land on improvement." Zhu Jiangguo was quick to interject. The teacher said that as long as a person has meditated for more than 10 years, the probability of the genetic liberation elixir causing a genetic breakdown would be infinitely close to 0. Zhang Shuli's expression became clearly calmer when Zhu Jiangguo mentioned the teacher. It was obvious that she had a deep trust in the teacher that Zhu Jiangguo was talking about. But the side effects? There are no buts. Zhu Jiangguo was very determined. Furthermore, the targets that the teacher is tracking are very little. There's nothing much for us to refer to from the consolidated results. Zutui did not know that his parents were worrying about his future after he left the house. He reached the school on time. The school was filled with students, their faces filled with anticipation. Many of them would become genetic superhumans after they consumed the genetic liberation elixir today. Every student, Zutui included, hoped that they could become a genetic superhuman. Speed as fast as the wind, or an Ironman with super strength, or vision as good as an eagle, or even the legendary supernatural abilities. Of course, almost all of the students were walking with a rigid gait or limping. Cheng Mo was even more exaggerated. He leaped into the school like a frog. They reported directly to court number 4 today. Yu Zeping was already waiting for the students at the court. He collected and scanned through their liability form and insurance forms. The probability of death that was going to happen during the genetic exams a few hours later was no joke. When it was Zutui's turn, there were no problems with his liability form and insurance form. However, Yu Zeping's eyebrows furrowed when he saw how normally Zutui was walking. It looks like the triple training yesterday was far less than enough for you. He didn't wait for Zutun to respond. Go! Start with double the training before the rest of the students start. Zutui's suave expression instantly became irritated. Teacher, I did reach my limits yesterday. Zutui tried his best to walk with a limp, pat, teeth and leather whip in the homeroom teacher's hand pointed toward Zutui. Do you think I will believe you? Zutui opened his mouth, then walked toward the court, frustrated. Cheng Mo, Tang Ting, and the rest of the students stole glances at Zutui. All of them were extremely amused. They were familiar with Zutui's situation. Zutui would always be energetic the next day, no matter how hard the training was the previous day. However, he was going to suffer today. Zutui got into the court extremely frustrated. Before he left, he shouted, "Teacher, Cheng Mo and the rest might be faking it too." The expressions of Cheng Mo, Tang Ting, and the rest of the students changed drastically. Yu Zeping instantly went where they are with his whip at hand. The thin whip was swaying with the wind. We'll know if they are faking it or not if we drag them out and make them train. Yu Zeping's so-called potential extracting training was not all name and no substance. The tripled amount of training yesterday had made most of the students reach their limits. They had just trained for a short time today before several students broke down and cried. However, they were only allowed to leave when the school doctor, who was present at the court with a life examination device in hand, ascertained that they were at their biological limits. Zutui was the last person to leave court number 4. The rest of the students only needed 1 to 2 rounds of regular training before the life examination device showed that their muscle strength and heart load had reached their limits. They could then move on to the next event. However, Zutui required 4.5 rounds. The homeroom teacher was extremely shocked. He did not realize that Zutui was this talented during their normal training. Deep inside, Zutui was exasperated. He knew that the culprit was the recovery speed he got from his nightly meditation lessons. All of the students washed up in school after the extreme training. They then checked through the information of their electronic identity and got onto a vehicle toward the location of their genetic exams. The genetic exams were taking place in 2 locations. The first was an examination hall in the Jincheng Genetic Evolution College. This location provided the Level D genetic compound chain allele elixir. The students who met the genetic admission score but fell short of the single excellence score would attend the genetic exams here. The second location was the Jincheng examination branch of the Jincheng Genetic Research Institute. This location provided the Level C genetic compound chain allele elixir, as well as the genetic activation stabilization elixir. The military had taken over both locations 3 days ago. In Class 37, led by Yu Zeping, aside from Cheng Mo and Zutui who had passed the double excellence score, 6 other students passed the single excellence score, 4 males and 4 females. Fingerprint, retina, digital identification document, facial recognition. After these 4 stations and the signature of the teacher leading the group, Zutun and the rest were finally allowed to enter the security tunnel of the Genetic Institute. This was the most high-profile security tunnel that Zutun had ever seen. There were 11 different security equipment. He could faintly see a variety of unmanned devices constantly prowling around outside the tunnel. There was also fierce armed military personnel. All of these attested to how important the genetic exams were. There was a vast hall at the end of the tunnel. It could easily hold several hundred people. One side of the room was made up of 40 tightly shut rooms. There was a display for student numbers in front of every room. Students whose numbers were called up were to enter that room. On the other side of the hall was another hall that was clearly labeled with abilities. There was a constant stream of students who entered those function halls after they were administered with their elixirs. There were 2 main kinds of function halls, the Extreme Branch Testing Hall and the Mystery Branch Testing Hall. Extremes bred superhumans. This was fundamental knowledge. Zutun and the rest of the students had learned about this. What attracted the attention of Zutui and the rest of the students was the row of rooms in the north that had a variety of colors. That was the Mystery Branch Testing Hall. Only the Mystery Branch could test for supernatural abilities. There were not many students, almost none, entering and leaving those rooms. Zutui had not seen a single person walk toward the Mystery Branch Testing Hall since he arrived at the main hall. At this moment, a door of the supernatural type testing hall at the mystery branch testing hall suddenly opened. A short man with a silly grin on his face walked out from the hall. He could not stop smiling. When the teacher in charge of the short man walked forward, the short man waved his arms in excitement. Superhuman. Teacher, I am a fire element superhuman. He had not finished his sentence when the sound of something catching fire rang out. The short man's body suddenly started to billow with smoke and fire. Amidst the smoke and fire, the short man's hair and eyebrows were the first to ignite, then his clothes and shoes. Side effects. The teacher in charge reacted quickly. He immediately turned around and dived toward the fire extinguisher. However, the reactions of the security personnel were even faster. They sprayed the short man with foam almost instantly after the smoke rose. The foam immediately engulfed the short man. However, the short man fainted before the smoke and fire on his body were extinguished. Bring him to cold storage room number 9. Set the temperature to 5 degrees. Then inject him with a level D recovery elixir. A researcher wearing a white coat appeared at the door of the supernatural type testing hall and relayed a string of actions to be taken without any emotion. It was clear that he had experienced this many times. He looked like a doctor. Yu Ziping's eyes suddenly lit up. Level D recovery elixir? That lad sure is lucky. Not only did he activate supernatural type genes, but he also managed to use a level D recovery elixir. It would be good if you guys have that boy's luck. He'll be happy if just one of you becomes like that. Teacher, that lad burned off his hair and eyebrows just now. Do you think that he burned off down there too? Cheng Mo elbowed Tang Ting. Down there, which means roasted bird. Barbecuedables? Thepaji Tang Ting instinctively cleared his throat and then elbowed Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui was shocked, having seen a superhuman for the first time. His thoughts then wandered, barbecue? Isn't that HT's favorite food? Yu Zeping, who had been smiling, immediately turned red. He was about to flare up and teach these three bastards a lesson. Zhu Tun and Cheng Mo's student numbers were called at the same time.